Binance has always been profitable. So even today, we're profitable, we're sustainable. But our rough allocation is about a third in stable coins and then a third in some of the larger coins. And also, we keep the BNB coin that we hold very separately in our accounting. And this has been in our financial reports even from very early days. So we always keep the BNB separate in terms of accounting for the cash flows we have. We do believe that many other platforms may include this as their cash reserves, which is and when they present to potential investors, etc., that may be somewhat risky or misleading. So we don't do that. We have records of our financial statements from very early days. We have always kept BNB separate.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cryptollennium. What you just witnessed was a clip of CZ Binance sharing the status of Binance's funds during this fiasco/bear market. Before we dive in further, please like and subscribe. A brief overview. We'll watch CZ describe exactly what happened when SBF contacted him during the bankruptcy. If Binance uses BNB, their native token, for leverage like FTT and many others, we'll review SBF's leaked messages to a journalist and some breaking news that is currently developing that you won't want to miss. So stick around and let's dig in.
Take us back, if you could, to when you first got the call from Sam and you first had a chance to look at the books, because I think a lot of people are still trying to understand exactly what happened here. How much of this was about commingling? How much of this was about terrible marking of the books? What did you see?
Yeah, I think I got a call from Sam 48 hours after I made the tweet, and then he wanted to talk. So at the beginning, I thought he would just wanted to, do a buyout on, do an OTC deal to buy out the FTT tokens we had. And then he wanted actually a buyout of the entire firm, of the entire FTX platform. And then, but then we got our team on it. It was pretty clear pretty soon that there's, there's misappropriation of user funds. The user funds are gone. At that point, it's clearly that he lied to his users, his investors, his VC investors, his employees. At that point, I thought I couldn't, whatever data that's in the data room, we couldn't trust anymore. So it was quite hard for us to do that due diligence. So we didn't go very far.
Do you think he understood what he was doing?
I think he thought he understood. I think he probably still thinks he understands what he's doing now, which I don't think he should be tweeting.
That's for sure. But in terms of intent, I mean, one of the things that's going to be looked at, I'm sure, by regulators, potentially by prosecutors, is what he intended to do. He seems to suggest in a lot of these tweets that he didn't understand, or he mismarked things. And when I say mismarked things, mislabeled things is what I think is the phrase that he's used. And yet, when you looked under the books, clearly it appears that he was demonstrably commingling funds, using the funds to leverage himself up and the like.
Yeah, I think, look, I didn't do the due diligence myself, but I think it will be very, very clear that Sam knows that he was using the user funds to do trading for Alameda, and he has been probably doing this for quite a while that nobody else knew until very recently. Well, a small number of people in FTX probably knew, but most of the other normal employees probably did not know. I think that's probably the most likely situation.
One of the things that I think this has demonstrated to the public about crypto is just how leveraged the business is. How so many of these coins, that FTT token and other tokens, have been used to leverage other tokens. How concerned are you about that? And how much leverage is in the Binance system, if you will?
Sure. So I think we are very concerned about anybody using the token they create for leverage, as a collateral. At Binance, we don't do that. We don't use BNB as collateral for anything we do. So it's very simple. Yeah.
In other news, Sam Bankman-Fried tries to explain himself. We mentioned we were going to go into depth about the leaked messages that just came out within the last 12 to 18 hours. Let's take a look at what was said. This article describes it in depth, but as you can see, the journalist said, you said a lot of stuff about how you wanted to make regulations, just good ones. Was that pretty much PR too? He said there's no one really out there making sure good things happen and bad things don't. Usually there's only one toggle, do more or do less. Yeah, just PR. F regulators. They make everything worse. They don't protect customers at all. The journalist continues on to say, does seem like some kind of consumer protection would be good, though. Maybe regulators can deliver it, but sure, does look like customers lose their shirts a bunch. He said, agreed on both. Would be good, but regulators can't do it. And you couldn't do it, and CZ sure isn't doing it, so who? And he says, they can't actually distinguish between good and bad. Just do more business versus do less business. And put up more moats versus put fewer moats. No one will. But you want to know the truth? No one is doing it in the rest of finance either. Or for that matter, or other areas that are regulated. The FDA isn't helping. The giant crackdown on big tech has no point or goal or philosophy behind it. OFAC is slowly undermining U.S. interests globally, which OFAC, if you look into it, they manage the U.S.'s trades in a summary. And this is the single biggest threat to the U.S. being a superpower. ESG has been perverted beyond recognition. So person says, I'm sort of putting together a picture where you don't believe anyone is doing anything for good reasons. You don't believe the good guys are good. So why not make it big and be the one who gets to decide what good is? This, if you've ever seen Naruto or any other good anime out there, the guy who takes control and defines good is never really the good one. And if you have to do sketchy stuff along the way, everyone else is doing it too, and plenty of them are worse, and people still like them as long as they win. Is that fair? SBF continues on to say, what we're left with at the end of the day is only the rich can invest. Only they can make or lose money. There's some truth to it, but it's also true that I didn't want to do sketchy stuff. There are huge negative effects from it, and I didn't mean to. But he probably doesn't even care. Each individual decision seemed fine, and I didn't realize how big their sum was until the end. So, on being willing to behave unethically, I was just re-listening to that conversation we had in the summer about whether you should do unethical shit for the greater good, and he said, what did I say? Like how he doesn't even remember because he knows where he stands, and it's probably on the wrong side. You were like, nah, I don't do unethical shit. Like if you're running Philip Morris, no one's going to want to work with you on philanthropy. And there's risk of doing more harm than good, but even if you subtract that out, pretty not worth it. He says, yeah. I was trying to figure out like what kind of PR the cutoff answer. And he said, man, all the dumb shit I said, it's not true, really. Yeah, I thought it might not be. He basically just came out and stated, all that goody-goody, I'm going to give everything to charity stuff is not true. And he's still walking the streets. Why is this man not extradited? He basically just spit in the face of regulators, Washington, and the 5 million customers that he bamboozled out of their money. Everyone goes around pretending that perception reflects reality. It doesn't. Some of this decade's greatest heroes will never be known, and some of the most beloved people are basically shams, he says. So you kind of don't believe in, like, doing unethical shit as anything other than a judgment we bestow upon losers. SBF says a month ago, CZ was a walking example of don't do unethical shit or your money is worthless. Now he's a hero. Is it because he's virtuous or is it because he had a bigger balance sheet so he won? Well, I can see why you didn't give that answer in the interviews. Heh, he responds. That's a weird laugh. For people who do laugh like that in text, no offense to you at all. It's just SBF. So the ethics stuff, mostly a front. People will like you if you win and hate you if you lose. And that's how it all really works in his mind. And he says yes. I mean, not all of it, but it's a lot. The worst quadrant is sketchy plus lose. The best is win plus doesn't matter. Clean plus lose is bad but not terrible. You were really good at talking about ethics for someone who kind of saw it as all a game with winners and losers. The reason this is probably true is because SBF is likely a sociopath. Come on now. Yeah, I had to be. It's what reputations are made of to some extent. I feel bad for those who got effed by it, by this dumb game we woke Westerners play where we say all the right shibboleths and so everyone likes us. And this is pretty much a good sum up of who SBF is. He's just a little kid in a grown man's body who basically just says what he needs to say to get mommy and daddy to give him what he wants. And Gary Gensler. You tweeted out some stuff like, "We never invest your deposits. Was that BS, right?" He said it was factually accurate. Huh? But like their deposits were totally not there. Or do you just mean technically it was Alameda? FTX, correct. Oh, so there we go. He claims, based on a technicality, he's not a liar. That's sociopath behavior. So, FTX technically wasn't gambling with their money. FTX just loaned their money to Alameda, who had gambled with their money and lost it. And you didn't realize it was a big deal because you didn't realize how much money it was. And also thought Alameda had enough collateral to reasonably cover it. He responds. Journalist says, "I get how you could have gotten away with it, but I guess that seems sketchy even if you did get away with it." And what's stupid about this is he could have easily gotten away with it. I heard today that Alameda was actually immune to being liquidated on FTX. So if you're cheating the system this bad and you're still losing, how stupid are you? It was never the intention. Sometimes life creeps up on you. Or maybe you're not as smart as you try to come off as. On what happened, was the Alameda thing when Luna crashed the first time customer deposits got lent out? That's what people are saying. Or was it more like the accounting was such that a lot of stuff you were doing was implicitly backed by customer deposits? He said messy accounting plus margin exchange, position built up over time, though in retrospect, Luna crash was what a lot of it did. But messy accounting, I didn't realize the full size of it until a few weeks ago. If you could do it all over again, would you just take more careful accounting, never touch customer funds, never go into crypto? He said more careful accounting, offboard Alameda from FTX once FTX could live on its own. Are there people who told you to be more careful? Are there people who you would have listened to? It's odd. I mean, maybe, but not really. And those who did, they did on other things. Not that. It's odd. Everyone was so worried and concerned about dumb shit we definitely wouldn't do, and that made no sense. Everyone was so worried and concerned about, and this is just a continuation of the same thing, but not about whether you were lending out customer funds. Seems like an obvious thing for them to worry about. He said, yeah, but it's complicated. And he goes into a checklist or a list of A, B, C. A, it wasn't quite lending them out. It was messier and more organic than that. Each step was in isolation, rational and reasonable, and then I finally added it all up last week when it wasn't. Most exchanges, this is B, did some variant on what we did, just not as big and without the run on the bank, at least recently, and more intentionally. And this is a slight towards CZ. This is why he says more intentionally. Victimhood. And C, everyone wants to be clever, and the clever thing to do is some complicated 3D chess involving customer orders or data or something like that, which makes no actual sense. This is kind of similar to the arbitrage that made him rich, quote unquote. So there's no point of like, let's lend out customer deposits, just various financial instruments that ended up adding up to that. And you didn't even see that they'd added up to that. He said, yeah. Like, oh, FTX doesn't have a bank account. I guess people can wire to Alameda to get money on FTX. 3 years later, oh, fuck. Looks like people got wired $8 billion, or people wired $8 billion to Alameda. And oh, God, we basically forgot about the stub account that corresponded to that. And so it was never delivered to FTX. This means none of the money ever got back to FTX. Ever. It was a one-way road, is what it sounds like. Other than what was recently hacked, which was probably just crumbs. And on what he regrets, he said, I effed up big multiple times. You know what my biggest single F up? He said, the one thing everyone told me to do. everything would be about 70% fixed if I hadn't. I'm trying to guess, but I have no idea. Chapter 11. He's referring to the bankruptcy. He's saying that the worst mistake out of all this, from his arbitrage in his early days to using consumer funds as leveraging them and losing, out of all that, Chapter 11 bankruptcy, after he screwed up, dropped the ball, collapsed the market, he says the bankruptcy was the problem. Like, you shouldn't have wrote it out and kept trying to make, you should have just wrote it out and tried to make the 8 billion back. He said, if I hadn't done that, withdrawals would be opening up within a month, with customers fully whole. But instead I filed, and people in charge of it are trying to burn it all to the ground out of shame. I might still get there, but after way more collateral damage and only 50% chance. He said, I'd take that. I'd take the under on that. Basically, we get there if both either A, Gary Wang, and that's the guy who we still haven't seen the face of, or Nishad comes back. Or B, we can win jurisdictional battle versus Delaware. He said Gary and Nishad are gone? Yes, scared. Or Gary is scared. Nishad is ashamed and guilty. Yeah, I would be too. Ashamed and guilty because all the customer deposits are gone? He said, yeah. People I've talked to have said Nishad was much more into the ethics and not being sketchy than you were. He said, yeah, it hit him hard. It hit all of us hard. But it hit him hard, in all caps. It seems like you have a lot more of a sense of yourself to fall back on, more of a sense that you are the only wrong if you lose. And he was more like, wow, we stole money from people who trusted us. The world is never so black and white. This guy thinks he's a philosopher. So on the hack, do you know what's actually up with the money that got mysteriously moved out of FTX after the bankruptcy? That's the other thing a lot of people are speculating about. He said hack, either employee or malware on an ex-employee's account, a few hundred M. Oh, casually. This leads me to believe that he does not give a shit and that he's probably involved because, anyone who responds like that, oh, casually, it's just a hack. Maybe some malware here and there, a few Trojan horses, but a few $100 million got lost. Big whoop. Okay, well, what's next? What's next? What's your plan? He said, I have 2 weeks to raise $8 billion. That's basically all that matters for the rest of my life. You can say that again. Journalist continues on to say, well, I hope that the depositors get the money back, but all I gotta say is I have no idea how anyone could possibly pull that off from this starting point. No trust. Well, a month ago, I was one of the world's greatest fundraisers. Now I'm the fallen wreckage of one. But there's one thing about being fallen. There are people who know what it's like and who want to do for someone else what nobody did for them. I hope he's right, because otherwise we're going to be feeling these effects for many months, and many people are going to be feeling these effects for years, maybe the rest of their lives. A lot of people have their savings in here, and a lot of people spent most of their lives saving that money prior to the bull run. Now, finally, the breaking news. This just uncovered another bombshell drops. The Securities Commission of the Bahamas is now contradicting their prior claim that they had not directed funds to be moved from FTX wallets. They now admit to ordering FTX to drain all FTX digital market assets into the Commission's wallet. Basically, what this is saying is that the Bahama government, the Bahamian government, I don't know how you say it, they are now being sent whatever is left of FTX. So what kind of move is this? If you explain it in basketball terms, it's basically like the referee trying to score points. If you stay tuned, we will be tracking this and covering it in real time. The next video, keep an eye out for it, will be up shortly. We will cover this in more depth, and we will go over the potential Gemini wreckage that is coming up. Gemini and Genesis lending protocol may bankrupt the market in a way that FTX could have. So stay tuned for the next video. I'll see you there. Please stay well, like and subscribe, and good night. or good morning.